Hello guys, in this video we are going to talk about prototype inheritance and everything about this. This is one of the most hard topic to grasp in JavaScript, but hopefully you are going to understand it between 1 hour. And trust me and stick with me, you are really going to understand under the hood what's really happened about the prototype inheritance. And end of this video, I'm sure you are going to have aha moments because same thing happened to me, so I want you to also understand the concept behind this. Let's get started. Firstly, instead of starting with the examples, I'm going to show you the big picture and the things that you have to really pay attention, and also why we are learning these things. Is this really necessary? Well, if you want to be a JavaScript developer, it's really necessary in my opinion. And also I'm going to show you the diagram that I draw for you to make it easier to understand. It also helped me to understand better, and I draw that by myself. It's going to make sense for you also. Let's start with here and let's explain why we are going to learn this topic. You know, in JavaScript, when you create an object, and any object that you make from this person, which is function constructor, it's going to have ability to access these things. And we are going to learn step by step how this process is happening. And also you are going to see how with time things evolve. And same thing in here. This thing is the what they call syntactic sugar of this, which means this thing exactly the same with this one, but the syntax is a bit clear. Clean. This is why mostly if you work with the object-oriented programming, and these things are related with the object-oriented programming. And the thing that we are going to learn is going to be exactly, truly what's happening behind the scene when you use this syntax or the syntax. They both using the things that we are going to learn. So even if you use the most modern way in your code, you should have knowledge about behind the scene. This is a small example I can mention about this fast. When you do this and when you do this one and this one exactly the same, which means it's syntactic sugar to below. So instead you using this one, it's, as you can see, it's more type, you use this one. But what happened when you do this one is behind the scene, it's doing this one, JavaScript engine, doing this for you. We can skip this one. This is not related with the topic that we are going to talk, but it's really good example to think about. I will come this later. I want you to look this diagram really well and try to take its picture and think about this. Think about how things are really related with each other. And mostly we are going to focus on here. Actually, all of them is really important, but you can focus these things. I'll show this diagram to you so many times, so you should get used to it. As I mentioned before, I will show you the big picture, so when I show you the examples, you are going to really understand them. If I show you first examples and later the big picture, it's not going to make sense. So you would have to watch the video again and again maybe. This is why I'm starting with here. This sentence is really important. What it says, any function will have prototype property. These things are built in, so if you go your Chrome or any browser that you use, type of function, it's going to print function. And same with these things, it's all functions. But what most people don't pay attention is this one. This function prototype is a function, but object prototype is object, and array prototype is object. Well, you could say every function is already an object, special kind of object, but this thing is really matter, this thing. And if you look at the diagram, you should see that function proto, and by the way, I will call this underscore underscore proto. The other name is dunder proto they call. So I will say this one is dunder, so we not get confused with the prototype, you know, because it's prototype, it's so easy to get confused. So I will use just dunder for this. When we do function dunder, we get the function prototype. On there, if you do dot constructor, it's going to point to function, and same with this. But if you notice, in here we say function dunder, but in here we're not saying dunder, we just say object dot prototype. Because if you say object dot prototype, it's going to come here. And if you say object dot prototype dot constructor, it's going to point itself, because this one is just an object. So in object, you can access its property with the dot. When you say object dunder, it's going to point to this one. Between here, when you say function dot dunder, it's going to point to function prototype. Also, if you say function dot prototype, it's also going to point this one. And after that, if you say dot dunder, it's going to point object prototype. And this is the last one. If you say object prototype dunder, it's going to point to null, which is the end of the chain. So when we look at here, function dunder points to this, and I say it's important because the reason I said it's important, if you check the all dunder or proto points to function prototype, and that points to here, and this also points to here. That's why most people say everything in JavaScript is object. This is the reason they say this. But what is this person, you say? This person is just a construction function that we are going to make later. But you can think this an array, you know, because an array built-in construction function, that's all. So if you say array proto, it's going to point function prototype. And object also a function constructor. If you notice, when we say type of object in here, it points to function. It doesn't point to object. Even though it seems like object, but it's actually not an object, it's a function. This is a function constructor. So any function constructor that you make, person, human, or whatever, or string is a constructor function, and it's built in, it's proto, it's dunder, going to point this one, and array same, or number same, they all going to point to this one. You can see I give the example in here. Are they equal to? Yes. Also pay attention in here. They are just like on diagram I showed you. Let's talk about this example. When you make a function in your application, and if you check its dunder to ask what is its dunder, it's going to point this one, which is this one. Since this is a function, and remember this is also a function, if you remember, this is a function, and this is also a function, and functions dunder going to point this one. This is important. So why I show you this? You might think that this is so clear. No, it's not, because we get confused. If I told you const object1 equal this, and if I say object1 dunder, what this would point to? Because when we think, you might think this is a function and it's literally like an object, and what is the object? It's going to point, you might think it's going to be object prototype, but it's actually not if you say object prototype. So it's really easy to confuse. Don't underestimate these things. These things are important and it's hard to grasp. So what about this? This is this one, which is going to point this one. We are going to see this, but if you're going to check like this, you will get the true. And like I said, you might think that this is a function, but you might think, oh, a function is just an object, so an object would point to object prototype. Of course, you would think like this, but no, it's going to point this one. I put in here a few methods and property. Mostly you are going to see these things frequently. And this is also going to be related with the inheritance, especially this one. I mean, all of them relate with it, but this is really important, I would say. In here, I want to mention about the prototype inheritance. It always exists since the JavaScript exists, but the implementation of it, with time, it evolved. So when things get evolved, they implement things like this. And behind the scene, JavaScript used strings. I mean, the evolving step is not our business, I know that, but it's really good to know how things work. All I want to say is that prototype inheritance exists since the beginning, but the implementation of this changed with time. And this is why these methods are created later on. This one and these things are created later. In here, what I'm trying to say is that when we create an object and when we bind, make the connection with the other object, that's all. We don't want to make 3 or 4 times with the different objects. Actually, you cannot do that, but it's not good for us to over and over using this behind the scene to make connection between the objects. Let's check this small example and then we are going into the real examples. In here, when we create an object, and this object dunder is going to point this one, and you can see in the diagram is this one. So any object that you make in JavaScript, it's dunder proto going to point object prototype. Any object that you make, but not function. Remember, I'm not saying function, I'm saying object. And object doesn't have prototype. Don't forget that. This object, if you go create an object and try to make the prototype, you're not going to get it. You get the undefined. And this is important. Remember, we say any function will have prototype, not any object. So this object will not have prototype property. Let's move the examples. In here, we just have simple two example, and one is animal, one is dog. And remember, you can also do like this, right? You can just make the empty object or do this. They are same. But for now, we are going to follow this one. When I save and I try to inspect them, when we check the animal, you will get this, and you will get this, and it's prototype. You will get this, it's prototype, you get this. I'm showing these things to you, so when things get complex, you really going to understand. When we do dog legs, of course, we are going to, legs, we're going to get undefined. Why? Because this is an object and this is another object. They don't know anything about each other, so there is no way for us to that dog to reach this, because it's nonsense, because this dog has no property like legs. This is why we get undefined. When we do type of dog, we get the object. Remember, any object that we create is going to be an object. When we do dog prototype, as I said before, this is going to be undefined. Why? Because it's not a function, it's an object. Since it's object doesn't have prototype property. Only function has this. Let's move second example. On each example I'm going to show you, please try to pause and do them by yourself. Try to think about them and try to understand them. Try to understand them, the diagram I gave you. When we check this example, we see still there is an animal, there is a dog, but in here we have proto, thunder, equal to animal. Also, you could do also like this. It really doesn't matter, but I just give you the both examples so that you can see the difference. This is an animal and this is the dog. When we check the animal, it was the same, but when we say this, do you notice something different? This is exactly this one, the animal, because we said the thunder is going to be animal. So since we said this is going to be animal, the prototype of the dog became the animal. And if we open this, as you can see, it's going to be this one. By the way, I want to say you that don't try to understand the concept to follow these things. I'm showing these things just because you to understand them really well. When your application got complex, there is no way for you to follow from here because it's going to be huge and you couldn't follow it. You cannot able to follow from here. At least this is my opinion. Don't try to understand the connection between the object from here. Try to understand what we are doing right now. And once you understand it, you won't need to even check this, because this things itself is really mess. There is no way for you to follow things and say, oh, this, and this, because if you go in here, for instance, by mistake, and you get the object itself, and there's no way. Don't do this. This is my suggestion to you. Let's talk about these examples. Since we know that we did this, and if we copy this, well, most probably you know the answer, but I'm just going to show you it's going to be true because we said it's going to be animal, and we see that it's equal. What about this one? Do you remember this one? Where this come from? This come from here. And by the way, I want to show you this one. What we do up until now, the animal is this one. Okay, animal became the parent, and the dog is children right now, based on what we did in our application. So when we say dog dunder is equal to animal, it says, oh yeah, it's equal to animal, because dog was the child to animal. And now with here, when we say animal dot is prototype, since animal, which is this parent, is connect with this one by default, even if we don't do this, any object that you create is going to be automatically bind with this one, because this is the parent, the upper object that we have right now in here. If you also do, I don't know, something like this, this guy is going to also point in this one. Think it like that. It's going to be somewhere in here, and it's going to point this one. So when we say animal is prototype dog, you can read this like this much more easy. Is dog proto equal animal? Yes, because we just did it. Let's check this. And as you can see, we got the true. But what about this too? What do you think about this when we say object prototype is this? Since if you check this, we are saying is animal dot proto is this one, and yes, it is this one. And we say is animal proto is this one. Well, you should think about this. What's really happening? If we do this, we get true. If we do this, we got false. Why? Try to pause and think the answer. And I think this is why JavaScript is really hard to understand when you don't expect the value. And it's not related with this topic, but it's really good example to think about what's happening. And I'm going to show also in diagram. And this is, imagine this is an animal, this is this object prototype. We know that this method exists in here. And also we know the animal is going to automatically be relation with this one, which means even though the animal doesn't have its proper prototype, it's able to access. Why? Because it has connection between the object. This is why we able to access it. And same in here. This access, this object is prototype is this. So when it tries to access object is prototype of this method, it went up and it went up and it's able to access it. But the difference is, even though if you do this, you get shock. Like if you do object that is prototype of equal object that prototype prototype dot is prototype of, if you do this, you get the true, and you say why, like they are equal, we access the end of the day the same. And this is one of the most crucial thing when you make an application or something, a program, and it doesn't work the way you think, and these things are the main reason. you think it's access something and they are truly equal, but it doesn't behave the same way, and this is the reason. And in here, the reason, when JavaScript calls the thing, it has this keyword. I know this is not related with the topic right now, but it's actually kind of relates, but it's also good to you to know. If you know, when it's called this, it say, hey, who is calling me? Is this object prototype? Yeah. So this animal proto points to this one, and if you check the diagram, yeah, it's exactly that we ask to this code. This is why it's returned true, because it says, hey, who is calling me? And it's this object calling me. This is why it says true. But in here, he asks, okay, does animal.proto is object? Because you asking me to object. You shouldn't think like this, because the one who is calling is this one, object. This is related with this keyword, but it's also related with the diagram, so this is why I'm showing you this. So this parent proto doesn't go like this. This is not like this. This is like this. This is why this return true, this return false, even though the exactly same method we are calling. Okay, let's move to other example. In here we are going to understand the object.create method, and remember when we did the relation between each other, we said dunder equal to animal. This is how we are able to connect this to this one. But in here we are going to do the same thing, but in the different way. And this different way is this one. So if you look to MDN, it says the object create method creates a new object, which creates a new object using an exist object as prototype of newly created object. So newly created object prototype should point to this object that we give. So basically when you do this, behind the scene this happen, which means behind the scene this happen, like dog proto equal animal, you say this. And if we just do this, actually let's see like this, save, refresh. Right now we don't have any relationship between each other. You see, they don't have relationship. But if I do this and create dog in this way, save, refresh, and since dog we didn't assign anything to it after, it is an object empty, but its proto should be the animal, which you can see its proto is animal. And if I say is this true, it's going to be true, because this does the same thing. I hope this is clear for you, and this is really important because the function constructor and the inheritance things exactly using this one under the hood. And what we're doing right now is making connection between each other, and this is what it's happen when you create a function construction, which we'll see. Let's see other example. In here, I'm just going to show you about the looping things that you might use. And this is the animal, just the same one. And we made the dog like this, and we assign some properties to it. All of them true. and this one is false, which comes from the animal. And we can loop like let prop in doc. You know that there is also an off in JavaScript. Just keep in your mind, at least I'm doing like this, like the object, you can go in object, right? So you in is like something you can inspect it close. So that's why if you do let doc in, you going to loop over the props. You do this, we just console log, and when we refresh in here, if you notice, we get also the animal properties, which maybe we don't want to do this. So in order, if we don't want to do this, we can do this one. We save, we refresh, now it's gone. It doesn't log this one because we have doc has on property. If this condition is true, or only is going to go in here. This is why we don't get this one, because this one is not related with the doc, it's related with the animal. And animal doc, if you do doc.smart, you are going to get it because we have connection. You know, if you do doc.anything, it's going to be undefined. But since we have connection with the smart, it's going to give us this one. I think this is clear, but the thing is that where this has come from, do you know? Well, you should know it's come from here. So since the doc is related with this one and any object, to be honest, even this one can access this one through the prototype chain. That's why they call prototype chain. If it doesn't find in here, it's going to up like that. Now we have covered about the objects and how it's related with each other. And now we are going to move to constructor function and how it's really happened, the same logic behind the scene, the proto, the object create, things like that. Let's see that. We know that in JavaScript, construction function is like this, and we can access its prototype and assign anything that we want, any function, any string, anything that you want, anything that you need. And then when you want to make an object to going to have communicate with this one, you use the new keyword. And if you forget this one, it's not going to work. And this new keyword does a lot of things behind the scene for you. And now we are going to understand what if we don't do new and like the manual thing, how this progress is going to work step by step. And the goal of this is this, to show you how these things happening. So this is why I will comment this. And also this person is in diagram is this one. And also array, imagine just array, you know, the array built-in one. This is, imagine it's somewhere else like this, just like object, but someone, imagine this one is array and this one is array prototype. And if you do an array object, it's just same flow. Everything is just same, even for string, for the number. So all the logic is like this about construction function. And class also relate with this. Class are using the construction function behind the scene. Let's see with examples. In this example, what we do, we make a function, just a regular function, and we return it. Remember, we return in here. If you recall, in the function construction, we doesn't return anything. Also, we just, for the convention, we start with the capital letter. It's just for the convention. Even if you put lower, it's not going to change. But we are going to do for the capital. Anyway, it's just convention. What we're doing here, we made an let person and we assign it property to it and then talk method to it and we return the person. So if we say const man equal this, we invoke it, it's going to be a person. So type of this is a function, type of man is going to be an object. Let's continue the example. In example 2, what we do, we still have the same function, we still create a person object, but in here we do person.eat instead of we define it something like function or true or string, anything that we want. We are doing this to outside, that is an object that has property or method to assign it, and we doing person.eat is going to be that object.eat, that object property.talk, things like that. We are just doing this and we define this object outside and we say person equal this and then we return the person. And when we save, we run, since this is a person, if we say p.eat, well, it's going to point this one and this one is true, it's going to be true, and person can talk, person can swim. It's come from here. But if you notice something that we have to, let's say we did something run or whatever, if we do run equals true, you have to come here, also do run equal blah blah blah, you have to do separately. Let's move the other example and we are going to talk about this. In this example, we figure out how to handle it and we said instead of doing them one by one, since this is an object and this is also an object, if I say, hey, this person going to be exactly this object. So if you do something like this in JavaScript and if this is an object, it's going to override it and it will become this one. And so that you don't have to do person.eat equal this blah blah blah, you just assign it. While we improve kinda, if you do also true, you don't have to type over here, just like above we saw. And if you actually say run, you see this is happen, and if we do this and run, we forgot this one, and run, we got the lag. It's kind of we improve, but let's see the other example. Now with this example and most probably with the other example, you will get the aha moment and you say, aha, this is why it's happened like this. And I want you to pause the video and try to see what we are doing and try to understand why we log in these things. And also check the diagram, try to answer them. Now, when you check this example, as you can see, we just changed this one. And don't get confused. Don't think that we are in function, blah, blah. Of course, we are in a function, but at the end, we have a person object and we do that person is going to be connect with this object we are saying. And this object, what is it? It's this one. It sits outside, but it's basically know what we're doing. We have connection between this to this. So basically when we did the doc to animal, this is the same idea. And for the diagram, it's just child is this person, and the parent is this one, person functionality. And we connect each other, we connect them in here, just like you see. Remember, what we did above was we just did equal. We did equal to this. We didn't bind anything like dunder. But in here, we just doing the dunder. The differences between this example and this one is this dunder. Now, if we save, we run, we get logs. This is what we expect. I'll just console log this because this is not the point. We save, we refresh, we get nothing. When we think about here, we are saying, hey, person, basically person upper level, who is this? Person upper level is this object prototype. What do you think? Remember the diagram and remember the position of the person. Well, in here, person is just an object, and in here, it doesn't have any connection between anything. So if it doesn't have any connection to anything, basically it's this one, right? Because any object, like object 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be this one. It's going to, its dunder, its proto is going to point to this one. So this is why when we inspect this, we save, we run, we get the true. One is true. And now we do person dunder is this object. Now we have connection and we try to inspect this one. Person dunder is just going to be this one. Well, I guess you can answer this since we saw in here. Now this is the person. This is the person functionality. And this is the object prototype. So is person proto will be this? No, it will be this, because this is what we're doing. So this is going to be false because it's going to be this. You can try it by yourself. We're going to check this one. I think you got the point, what I'm trying to explain. And we say, is this dunder equal object prototype? Well, if you check, since we know it's parent, it's going to be yes. By the way, if you do like let child person like this, if you do child person dot this child person, it's same concept, which means sorry, like this I meant this one is going to be parent this one. So basically think it like child, this child person is going to be behind this. Like I can't show it, but it's basically think behind it, it has an object that is going to point to this. So think it like that. It's simple concept, you know. I'm going to remove this. Same idea, always. When we check this, is this proto is going to be this? Well, yes, it is. As you can see, save, run, true. So what do you think about this one? If you do, well, if you notice that we're referring to this function, if you check this one, what do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be this one? Well, remember we said any function any function proto, because at the end, as you remember, this is a function, this is a function, this is a function, and what we say, and this is a function. So if you check the diagram, since this is a function point to this, and since this is a function dunder point to this, so any function is also going to point to this, because it's same idea. Just like function points to this as dunder, you know, proto. And when we check in here, let me do this to not confuse you, but we say, hey, is this object prototype? You know, it's really confusing if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, you might don't do this, but it's really good for you to understand what you're doing. So if we do this safe, we will get false, because it's not going to be this, it's going to be function prototype, and we save true. Let's see the other example. I hope that was clear. I mean, I know that I repeat some stuff, but it's really important to understand, to see the big picture. You might spend 1 hour with this video, but I promise you never forget this again. Like, you truly understand it, and it's going to impact your entire development career. Let's move to the other example. In this example, if you notice, we just doing the same thing, but with the object create. And since we cover what object create does, when we do let person, it says, hey, this person is going to be a new object that you pass in here, and its dunder point to this one, which means think really don't think complex. This one is going to be a parent of this one, and you are making connection between these two things. And now when you do this, what's happened, this is a person, which is child, and this is a function, person functionality object. This is what it does. Let's just run this example, see if everything works. Remember, if it doesn't work, if we wouldn't have access to these things. So if we do this, it just works as we saw. And I want to show you this one to make everything clear. When we do person dunder, is this equal this one? Well, most probably, you know, based on what I'm saying, it's going to be true. Why? Because, like I said, it's going to point this one. And for this, we do twice. Basically, we check, hey, go twice up. And is this one? Well, yes, because as you can see, it's one up twice, and it's going to point this one. And it's going to be true. Also, if you notice, this is same. Why? Because we point one level up. And if we do this, run true. If you do it 3 times, I mean twice for this one, I know it's clear, but just to show you, it's going to be null. Why? Because we doing this, hey, go one up and then one up. Where's this? It's null, because after 1, 2, it's null. And when you save, you run true. Why? Because we said, is this equal to true? Which is true. I think this is clear, and let's move the other example. This example is big moment, and if you inspect it, you see that we don't have any object. We removed that object that was the outside. You remember this one? We remove it, we don't use it, and we are just saying, hey, function, person function, and just ignore this one for now. We say, hey, let person just create one and do this. Why are we doing this? Remember what we said in the first one, any function will have prototype property, okay? Now, what we do, we reference this one. We say person function prototype. Since we know this is a function, and we say, okay, this is a function and it should have person function prototype. And we assign it to person. What we do in here, we are making connection between this object that we are creating. Remember, we are going to use this because we're returning from there. At the end, when we do this, we are using this one. And when you do this, this person, dunder, is going to point this one because this will be parent of this one because this is an object. Actually, before running this, let's see what we are doing. If you save, if you run, okay, we refresh and we should have this one, right? We do this, well, yeah, we get this one. If we do this prototype, you see that we are getting this. And also if you do type of this prototype, we get the object. This is exist on the fly when we create this one. So that's why we can reference it. And now if we do this and we run it, actually before showing this, let's see the easiest part. Since we know we return this and we refresh, we should able to access this. Remember, we doing this after we doing this, still we can access it. Why? Because they have connection. This person, it doesn't find it and it access from prototype. And this is why you can do many things like AA, BB, whatever you want. And you are going to able to access these things because you have connection between. And I want you to show this what we're doing in the diagram. What we're doing is this one. Don't get confused. You might think, hey, this is not a capital P. It doesn't matter. We're doing this because of convention. When you do construction function, you start with the capital P, and this construction function is a function, and this is also a function. So you can do this. Imagine this person function is this one, and it has a prototype. And what we do is you did a person, just like here. And you say, hey, person, your proto, remember this, bind the proto, your proto dunder, your dunder is going to be this one. And we say your dunder is going to be this one. We're doing this one in here. And when we check this prototype, proto is going to be this one. Well, yes. Why? Because it's going to be this one, as you can see. But remember, this function, dunder is going to point this one. I think you got the idea, but let's see. I'm going to remove this things so that you understand. We just invoke, even though I can do this and just do this and save. We saved, we run, it gets true. It gets true because when we have this function, this is already exists on the fly, and we can refer, is this one? Just because this is this one, it's true because it's already exists since this one is created. Now I want you to think about this one. Probably this is really easy for you since you know the big picture, and when we save, we run, it's true because this points to this, as you can see. Before moving the next example, which I believe is going to be the last one, I want to point off something. Remember that we said this one is going to type of object. And what do you think about this one? It's going to be function. Like I said, we set this is a function. Well, yeah, type of person function is a function. This is also a function. You know, this is a built-in, and it's a constructor function, and it's a function. But we said any function will have prototype property. Some people say prototype property object. And I don't think that is really 100% true. But as you can see, it's function. Well, at the end, it's point to the object, which is this one, I know, but it's nice to know that this function prototype is a function, not an object. And I also mentioned in here, if you remember. Let's move to the other example. In this example, what we're doing is that we just change the function name to the person with the capital P, and we just create the object, and still we return this object with the person prototype by creating this object to assign to person. Just same above, exactly same, but we change to the person so that we can see where we are going. It's just same. I'm not going to stay over it. It's just same thing. We change the name and we do this. And we already cover what this means. Let's move to the last example. And finally, we are on the last example, and as you can see, we just say function person and we put nothing inside. All we doing is const p equal new person, and we are using new keyword, and this new keyword does all of the things that we covered up until now, like the object create stuff and the returning object, and also this keyword stuff. I mean, it's also related with this, but it's not the topic of here. And what I'm saying is that this new keyword is doing everything that we did up until now. So when you say const p new person, this is why this person has ability to connect with these things. So when you say this person prototype.eat and this, and you do this, save, run, you get this. If you remove this by mistake, save, run, you get error. The error says cannot read properties of undefined reading it, which means when you're doing this, it give you the undefined. And what do you think we are having this error? Is this because of this, or is this because something else? Well, you notice that we on purpose we didn't put new keyword, and this is just a function. And you know that in function, if you don't return anything, it's going to return what? It's going to return undefined. And we are saying const p is equal to this. And you might think that it's because of this, but actually not. Why? Because we said that any function that we create is going to have what? Is going to have person prototype. So if you do console.log person.prototype, you save, you run, well, you get what you think. Because since we create this one, we have ability to access this. This one is happen on the fly, and we assign this it to here. The problem is, since we don't put new keyword inside here, this object creates stuff to connection between here, and returning that connected object, it doesn't happen behind the scene. And just because it doesn't happen when we do this equal to person, it just do whatever we asked. It run this one and it returns to undefined. So if you do console.log p, you save, you run, you get undefined. If you do undefined dot anything, you get this error or it. Because it's undefined, you cannot access anything. This is why we get this error. If you put new and just save, run, you get anything that you want. And p.proto equal to this one. Is this, what do you think about this? Well, since we know the p is just an object created by the person, and its dunder is going to point person prototype. This is true. Save, yes. And you can see in here, it's going to point this one. I know I mentioned many times, think this like an array also. You can think array prototype, and this is just an array. This is the same idea, array, string, number, object, you know, because object proto is also point to here. And before finishing the video, I want to mention about this. Before forget, I know this line is not related with the proto stuff, but I'm just going to also talk about this. It's going to be additional information for you. And in here, let's assume we do this, okay? Let's refresh and do const a equal new array. Remember, just like here, when we create a new person, we do new person, and now since array is built in, imagine this is an array, we just say, hey, give me an object with a and do this to new array. And I say, yes, okay. If we do this, just for information, if you do array dot prototype, remember the diagram, it's going to be true. Why? Because we make a new object and it's dunder going to point to person. If we do, hey, what is the array dot prototype dot dunder, well, you guessed, in here it's going to point object prototype. And if you say object, prototype, yeah. But what I'm saying is when we do, let's say const b equal this, right? We said it's same. So b dot proto is this equal a dot. Yeah, because they are same object in different memory. Imagine this is an a, and in here this is a b. It's going to point to same thing, and this is why we get true. And you know that we said b is empty array and a also empty array, if you say like this. And if you ask, is this equal this? It's going to say false. It's just like we ask like this, new array. Why is this? Because in JavaScript, when you create a new object, it's going to assign a new ID, new unique ID you can think in memory. And this is why, even though it seems like they are equal, they are not equal, because it's compared to relate to the memory spot. This is why it's returned to false. The point is that in this example, this is the syntactic sugar of this one. Just like when we use class, and class is actually not class that we think, it's just a function in JavaScript. If you say const c equal class like this, and if you say type of c, it's going to point to a function. So this is the whole point. When you use class in JavaScript, it's actually related just like in this diagram. You use in here, something like in here, you say, hey, give me a class, I don't know, human. When you say class human, you under the hood have this. In fact, if we say, let's say class human like this, and since we know type of human is a function, and every function can have the prototype on the fly. If you say woman.prototype, well, you'll get the object. And what is this object? Remember, it's this one. So if you say, hey, what is this? Is this one? Well, let's check. Woman.dunder equal object dot prototype. Well, of course, it's going to point false because I made a mistake. Like I'm trying to do hey human, this human, this should be this one, you know. It's just something that I'm sleepy, I guess. So it should be like this one, function dot prototype. Now it's true. If you say dot prototype dot this object dot prototype, now it's true. Why? Because we said it's just a function. Think like a human in here, even though we said it's class, but under the hood it's just this concept that's happening, as you can see. And this is really important. I think you got the point really well, and there's no reason to give you more example about. What I'm trying to say is the class is just a syntactic sugar of function constructor, and these things all happen behind the scene. Just to make it much more clear, if I say const age equal new human, remember you have to use new keyword, just like the construction function on the classes. You say this, and now this age variable is this one. You can think like it. So if I say age dot this equal to this, it's going to be true. And this is the end of the video. I hope it was really helpful for you, and I hope it's really clear now for you. And if you really think this content helps you to understand things better, please don't forget to like and support. And thank you for watching, and don't have a good day, have a great day.